Very good morning, dear students. I welcome all of you to the today's session. And this session we are going to continue the discussion of chapter 3, that is organization of data. In the previous class, we have already started the discussion of the contents relating to organization of data. And in that already we have discussed the meaning of what is raw data and what do you mean by classification of data. And also we have started the discussion of the types of classification of data. The types of classification of data. In that, mainly there are 4 types of classification of data we have. First one, chronological classification. Second one, spatial classification. And third one, qualitative classification. And fourth one, quantitative classification. Already we have discussed what do you mean by chronological classification. Here, chronological classification refers to classifying the data or organizing the data based on time duration. Based on time duration such as hours, weeks, days, months, years. On the basis of this time duration, when we are going to classify the data, that kind of classification will be called as chronological classification. And the second one is spatial classification. Second one is spatial classification. Here the spatial classification is nothing but when the data is organizing or classifying on the basis of the geographical locations. On the basis of geographical locations like city-wise, village-wise or districts-wise and country-wise or state-wise. If we are going to classify the data which we have collected, then that kind of classification will be called as spatial classification. And one more type of classification of data is nothing but qualitative classification. Here, qualitative classification means when the data is organizing or classifying on the basis of the qualitative characteristics or attributes of the data. When the data is classifying based on qualitative characteristics or attributes like based on gender, based on the literacy and based on their special characteristics, if we are going to organizing or if we are going to classifying the data, then that kind of data classification will be called as qualitative classification. And one more important type of classification we need to discuss, that is quantitative classification of data. The fourth type of classification of data is quantitative classification. Now, very simple. The quantitative classification of data is nothing but when the data is going to be organized or classified based on the quantitative characteristics or attributes of the data, then that kind of classification will be considered as a quantitative classification. Take our meaning now. Quantitative classification refers to classifying the data on the basis of on the basis of quantitative characteristics or attributes like or example height, weight, marks, income, age, etc. Based on this quantitative characteristics, based on these quantitative characteristics, if we are going to classify the data, then that kind of data classification will be called as quantitative classification of data. All of you understood, I think, that there are mainly 4 types of classification: chronological, spatial, qualitative and quantitative. Here quantitative classification means when we are going to classify the data based of or on the basis of quantitative characteristics or attributes like height, weight, marks, income, age, etc. And now we will have one example for this type of classification. Example. Already we have discussed in the raw data the marks of 50 students in the economics subject. That data only we will take it as an example now for this better analysis. Okay. Now we are taking the raw data example, that is the marks scored by the 50 students in the class in an economic subject or in economics examination. And based on that data, now I am going to classifying the quantitative classification. Here I will take marks. Marks is also one of the quantitative characteristics. Based on the marks, if we are going to classify the data, that is also called as quantitative classification. That's why I am taking this example. Marks. Here frequency or number of students. Here marks of the students is 0 to 10. How many students got the marks? Next 10 to 20, 20 to 30. 30 to 40, 40 to 50, 50 to 60, next 60 to 70, 70 to 80, 80 to 90 and 90 to 100. The students of the marks are ranged between 0 to 100. Range between. Now observe the raw data example. Now observe the example which I have given to the raw data. We have 50 students marks in economic subject and the marks range is between 0 to 100, and that's why I have taken the classes from 0 to 10, 10 to 20, 20 to 30, total from 0 to 100 the marks scored by the student. And here how many students have got marks between 0 to 100? By observing that data, there are no students have scored between 0 to 100. That is zero frequency. Number of students scored between 0 to 100 is no one. It means 0. And the number of students scored between 10 to 20 marks is 4 members. 4 members. And from 20 to 30 marks, the number of students are 2 members. 2 members have got the marks between 20 to 30. And the marks between 30 to 40 is scored by 3 members. And also marks between 40 to 50 are scored by 6 members. And from marks between 50 to 60 is scored by 10 number of students. Scored by 16 number of students. And marks between 60 to 70 is scored by 10 number of students. And marks between 70 to 80 is scored by 2 members. And in the same way, your 3 members. And the marks between 90 to 100 is scored by 4 number of students. This is how. There, by observing the raw data, we didn't get anything. We had not have chance to analyze the marks. When that raw data are the marks of the 50 students, we are going to classify. Likewise, here easily we can analyze or easily we can come to a conclusion. How many have got 0 between 10 to 0, and how many students got between 10 to 20 marks. How many got from 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50, 50 to 60, and likewise, how many have scored marks like between these classes. Easily we can make analysis. For this way, the quantitative classification is better to understand the marks, weight, height, and income, and some other categories. This is what the classification of data, and next we'll discuss now about the continuous variables and discrete variables. The variables are 2 types: continuous and discrete. Continuous and discrete. We already discussed the meaning of variables. Here, the variable refers to the things which will be keep on changing from time to time. The things which will be keep on changing from time to time, that can be called as variables. Here, the variables are considered as a 2. One is continuous variable and one more discrete variable. Now, we'll discuss what do you mean by continuous variable and what do you mean by discrete variable. Here, we will have 2 more questions. Differentiate between continuous variable and discrete variables. That's why now we'll have a discussion with the meaning of these 2. Continuous variable. Here, continuous variable in the sense that can take any numerical values. Continuous variables means it takes any numerical values like integrals, fractions, and not equal fractions. Means simply we can say continuous values are variables means the values which will be add, multiply, we divide and subtract. That values will be considered as continuous variable, or we can also say continuous variables means it will consider the in numerical values. It will be considered any numerical Here continuous variables refers to that can take any numerical values like integrals, integral value means, for example, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Likewise, and fractional values such as 1/2 or 2/3 or 3/4 are not fractional values like fractional values such as root of 2, root of 3, root of 5, etc. are called as continuous variable. Here, continuous variables means any numerical values including integral values, fractional values and non-fractional values are considered as a continuous variable. Example for this is measuring the distance, height, weight, time, etc. We can use as examples for continuous variable. And one more. Here the continuous variables means it can be have decimals and fractions. It can be broken down into fractions and decimals. The values which can be broken into fractions and decimals, that values will become under continuous variable. Easily I said, right? Values which will be add, subtract, multiply and divide, that values will become under continuous variable, which we can be now. We'll know the meaning of discrete variable. Here, discrete variable are the variables which take only certain values is called discrete series. Is called discrete variable, which will take only certain values and it's not in a continuous order, and the values of the discrete series will always jump from one value to another value. The values of a discrete variable will be always jumps from one value to another value, and there won't be an equal distance, and which will be not be add, not to subtract, it can't be divided and multiplied certain values, which will come under the discrete series. The values it jumps from one value to another value, but not in continuously. Not in continuously. Here, the value and our discrete variable used to jump from one value to another value. That value will be not in a continuous order. Here, we can take example, the number of students. Example, number of students in the class, and number of children in a family, books, etc. This always we can't able to break, or we can't able to take a middle values, or we can't divide it, or we can't multiply the values, such as number of students in the class, number of children in a family, or books. These numbers or values will be just from, now example, the student A will be having 10 books. When we go to the student B, he will be having 17 number of books. Then when we go to the student number C, and he may be having 30 to 40 number of books. And here, the values of this discrete series will not move in a continuous order. It will be jump from one value to another value, and only certain values only it will be considered. Certain values only it will be considered. And here, under the discrete series cannot break down fractions or decimals. This is what? Discrete variable. Here discrete variable means which take only certain values, and here the values of discrete variable will jump from one value to another value. And for example, we can take number of students in the class, number of children in the family, and number of books which we have, or the ticket we have to travel. These are the examples for the discrete series. And under the discrete series, the values we can't be able to break down into fractions and decimals. Now we'll move to this is what continuous and discrete series. Here they will ask 2 mark or 4 mark question. What do you mean by discrete variable, or what do you mean by continuous variable, or they may ask differentiation between the discrete and continuous variable. Now we'll move to one more important topic in the chapter 3, that is frequency distribution. Here, in order to organize the data in a proper order, first we need to know what is frequency distribution, how the total frequencies can be distributed in a certain order for the easy organization of data. Here, frequency distribution refers to it is a comprehensive way in order to classify the raw data. It is a comprehensive or the systematic way of classifying the raw data. We all know that raw data means which is collected and not in a proper order. For that raw data, thus when we are going to systematically classify or organize the raw data in a proper order, that is nothing but frequency distribution. Your frequency distribution means the comprehensive or the systematic way of organizing the raw data. Systematic way of organizing the raw data in a proper order. Nothing but frequency distribution. Your frequency distribution is nothing but or refers to the comprehensive way to classify the raw data of a quantitative variable. Raw data of a quantitative variable, or simply we can say one more meaning. The frequency distribution refers to systematic presentation of values of a variable with their respective class frequencies. Is called frequency distribution. Your frequency distribution refers to systematic presentation of values of a variable with their respective class frequencies is called as frequency distribution, or simply we can say the comprehensive way of classifying the raw data of the quantitative variable is also known as frequency distribution. And for this, I have taken one example. Here we have a marks of 50 students. Example, we have a marks of 50 students in economics, and this is one of the variable. The marks is a quantitative variable, and that quantitative variable values we have classified in a particular order. We are systematically arranged the values in a particular order. This is what nothing but frequency distribution. And here, one thing we need to understand, what is class frequency and what is class limits, what is lower limit, what is upper limit, what is interval values, and what do you mean by frequencies. That everything will be known one by one. Now we will discuss one by one. Here, first we need to know what do you mean by class frequency. Here, class frequency means the number of values in a particular class limit. The number of values in a particular class limit is called as class frequency. For example, we will take 30 marks. How many students are scored? 2. 2 is nothing but class frequency. The number of values between the class limits is nothing but class frequency. Refers to number of values within number of values in a particular class is called as class frequency. As an example, if I take one more example, the class number of frequencies in particular class is 15 to 16. The number of frequencies is 16. The number of frequencies is 16. Now, one more important we'll discuss now, that is class limits. Class limits. Here, class limit in the sense the two ends of the class. The two ends of the class is nothing but class limit. Now, consider it is one of the class. The two ends is lower limit and upper limit. The two ends of the class is considered as the two ends of the class is called as class limits. Class limits. Example 30 to 40. 30 to 40. The ends 30 and 40 is considered as class limit. The ends of lower limit and upper limit of the class, which means two ends of the class, will be called as class limits. Here, upper limit. Here, upper limit is nothing but highest value of the class limit is considered as upper limit of the class or upper limit. Highest value of a class, highest value of a class considered as a upper limit. Example 30 to 40. Here, which is the upper limit or highest value in that particular class? The highest value in that particular class is 40. Then the 40 is nothing but upper limit of that particular class. In the same way, lower limit is nothing but lowest value in that class is nothing but lower limit. Here the lower limit is nothing but 30. Then 30 is considered as lower limit of the class. Understood? Here class limit means the two ends of the class is called as class limits. Here upper limit is nothing but highest value of the class, and in the same way lower limit is nothing but lowest value of the class limit. Lowest value of the class limit is called lower limit. Take example 30 to 40. Here in this particular class, which is the lowest value, the 30 is the lowest value in the particular class, then it is considered as a lower limit. Here in that particular class, the 30 is the lower limit. and highest value is 40, then it will be considered as upper limit. This is what class limit. Class limit is two ends of the class. Your lowest value in that particular class is considered as lower limit, and highest value of that particular class is considered as upper limit, and the values between this particular class is considered as a class frequency. The values between this particular classes is considered as class frequency. Then this is what the concepts, and one more we need to discuss. One more topic is we need to know about what do you mean by class interval or class width. Class interval or also called as class width. Here, class interval is nothing but the difference between highest upper limit and lower limit of the class is nothing but class interval. Your class interval refers to the difference between upper limit and lower limit of the class is nothing but class interval or class width, also called as class size. Here, the difference between upper class limit, difference between upper class limit and lower class limit is called class interval. It's called class interval. These are examination point of view very important. They will ask, what do you mean by class limit? What do you mean by upper limit? What do you mean by lower limit? Or what do you mean by class interval? Likewise, they will ask for 1 mark or 2 marks. Here, class interval refers to the difference between upper limit and lower limit of the class. Example, 30 to 40. Here, 30 to 40 we will take a class. The difference between these two limits. What is the difference between these two limits that can be called as class interval? And we also have a formula to find the size or interval of that particular class. That formula is upper class limit minus lower class limit. Upper class limit minus lower class limit. Minus. Here we have taken example 30 to 40. The upper class in that particular class is 40 and the lower limit of this particular class is 30. 40 minus 30, you will get answer 10. That's right. Then this is what the interval of a class. Interval means the size of class or the difference between upper limit and lower limit is 10. Then this is called class interval or class size or also class width. The difference between upper limit and lower limit of the class. And to find this class interval, we have a formula upper limit minus lower limit. Understood, right? And next, one more important topic we need to understand. Next, one more topic is class midpoint. Midpoint or middle value. Here, class midpoint or middle value in the sense the central value of an upper limit and lower limit. The central value or between value of the upper limit and lower limit will be called exact middle value of the class. Exact middle value of the class. Middle value of the class, or also we can say one more meaning. The class midpoint is lies. It lies between upper class limit and lower class limit. Upper class limit and lower class limit. The exact middle value of the class. For example, take a class that is 60 to 70. 60 to 70. In this class, the exact middle value of this class limits. Exact middle value of the class limit is nothing but a class midpoint. To find the class midpoint, we have a formula. The formula is upper class limit plus, here it considered plus lower class limit divided by 2. Lower class limit divided by 2. Here we have taken example 60 to 70. Here upper class in this particular class is 70. Upper limit of the particular class is 70 and lower class in the particular class is 60. 70 plus 60 divided by 2, we will get 1 by 2 is equal to 65. We got now the exact middle value of this class, right? What is the middle value of the class is between 60 to 70 becomes 65. Or if take example 30 to 40, then exact middle value of this class is 35. Even you can apply to the formula also. Here 40 upper limit is 40, lower limit is 30. When we divided by this 2, 70 by 2, then we will get 35. This is how to find out the class midpoint. Right now, all of you understood, right? Class frequency in the sense the number of values in the particular class. Class limit in the sense the two ends of the particular class is called as class limit. Here upper class limit means the highest value of the class limit and lower class limit means the lowest value in the particular class limit. And class interval is nothing but the size of a class or the difference between upper limit and lower limit of the class. And here the class midpoint is nothing but the exact central value of the two limits of the class. Exact central value of the class is nothing but class midpoint, and it always the class midpoint will be lies between the upper class limit and lower class limit. And to find that formula is upper class limit plus lower class limit divided by 2. And we have taken example 60 to 70. 60 plus 70 by 2. And we will get 30 by 2 and final answer is 65, the exact central value or middle value of the class we have found it. These are the preparations for the frequency distribution. When we have a draw data, with the draw data, if you want to organize in a proper order, with this key issues or key points mainly we need to understand. I hope all of you understood these important concepts under the frequency distribution, and we'll continue in the next chapter, that is how to make a frequency distribution when we have a raw data. Thank you everyone.